Here we are today in New Mexico. If you were ever in a desert and you were looking for food, obviously the most important thing to find in a desert is a water source. Now here's a good sized one here. You don't have to worry much about water in this situation. This is not a video about water, but it is about food. And one of the great things about the desert in much of North America is you have one of the greatest food sources you could possibly want on multiple levels, and that is the prickly pear cactus, or the nopal, or you make them into nopalitos. So we're going to talk about how to gather the fruit, but before that I want to tell you some of the scientific benefits to both your physical health and maybe even your mental health. Now here, let's look at diabetes and nopales. Nopales are the pads or the leaves of the prickly pear fruit. Researchers had 14 people with type 2 diabetes eat a high sugar breakfast with or without 300 grams of nopales. It turned out that when consuming 300 grams of nopales, the individuals had significantly lower blood sugar and lower levels of insulin than when not consuming them. So this shows, I mean, that's amazing to lower both the level of blood sugar and insulin. But let's go even further. What about prickly pear juice and pain, physical pain? In the journal Clinical Interventions in Aging, they did a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial to see if Nopal cactus fruit juice, which is prickly pear juice, had any impact on people with chronic pain. And they found that those consuming prickly pear fruit juice had enhanced mobility and needed less pain medication for their normal daily functioning. And it may be in part to the anti-inflammatory properties of the fruit. So maybe consuming these might actually lower your levels of pain. That's incredible. But let's go even further. Here's prickly pear fruit. A meta-analysis of studies was conducted looking at prickly pear fruit consumption, and they found that it lowered percentage of body fat, it lowered blood pressure, and total cholesterol. So overall, this seems like a very healthy food to eat. But this last one's quite interesting. What does it do to anxiety? This one's, well, we'll find out. Historically, the fruit of prickly pear was used in the country of Turkey for anxiety. Does it work? In a study on, well, mice, they found that a certain extract from prickly pear fruit was helpful in lowering anxiety in mice. And after all, it must be stressful being a mouse, I'm sure, especially if you're being tested on all the time. We don't know for sure if it helps anxiety, but hey, it's a healthy food anyway, so it might even help out your mental health. The first place I ever had them was in the state of Texas. Some friends of ours cooked up some nopali or nopalitos. When you cut them up, they kind of look like, and we're talking about cutting up the pad, they end up looking, when they're cut up, something like a green bell pepper. And they have a nice flavor to them. I enjoy them. And that's one of the great things about the prickly pear, is that this plant has two edible parts. Basically, other than eating the thorns themselves, you can eat the pad, which is the leaf of the plant, or you can eat the fruit. And so if you find them, even if the fruit is not in season, you can eat the pad, and you're getting a pad with 88% water. And to think about that in the middle of a desert, now right here isn't so deserty looking, but if you went over here to my right, probably 300 yards, you would be in an absolute desert. And it's dry, it's just what you would expect, but this is the kind of plant you can find all over much of North America, especially in Mexico and then throughout the contiguous 48 states, also called the conterminous 48 states. And except for maybe Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, they're basically in every other state. Hard to believe. They can obviously grow in quite cold conditions. We typically think of them as a desert plant, but you can find them in places like Michigan. I mean, it's kind of a surprise. And so, but speaking of this plant, I want to talk to you about how to eat it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get a nice sharp stick. You can carve it with a knife, and you're going to take that stick and you're going to pierce the fruit through, and you want to use something maybe like a knife or another stick to prop up the plant so you don't knock it over, and then you simply remove the fruit. Another option is to use some tongs And you can simply come to the fruit, get good grasp on it, and take a couple of twists and turns, and there you have it. And you can use these tongs, if they're long enough, to roast it in the fire to take off the spines and the tiny little sharp, painful glow kids that drive you nuts. Now, if you look at this one here, this one looks pretty innocuous. These fruits are totally not ready at this point. They're very green, but if you look closer, they look totally fine. You think, oh, I can just grab those, no problem at all. But when you look closer, they have these little tiny hair-like barbs, and they really you're seeing the thorns, but not those, the tiny little hair-like structures. I've had them in my lips. It's not a pleasant experience. At this point, what you can do is you can use fire. Now, you could use a bonfire, that'd be even better. I think this time of year it would not be allowable in this area because of the dry conditions, although we've had more rain than usual. But using fire, you could stick it in a bonfire, and this will burn off all these little barbs, technically called glow kids. And as you burn them off, it doesn't take a ton, just a little bit of fire will burn them off. It doesn't even cook the plant. The outside, it'll still, at least in this situation, it still stays cold to the touch. Now, another option is simply to use a gas-powered stove in doing this. It's going to be much faster than something like a lighter. But once again, use a stove, use a fire, whatever you got. So now the barbs are burnt off, and you can use your finger and you can simply just rub them off. And as you rub them off, they will, now it's going to be safe. You're not going to have a finger filled with these barbs. And as you notice, there's water coming out. Some of the juice from the plant, some of that nice sweet juice is coming out because I punctured it with the stick in this case. So that's one way of doing it. Now, there's another option. I've read that the Native Americans would grind it in the ground if they didn't have the option maybe for the fire or just a quick way to eat that. And so rubbing it in sand, rubbing it in the dirt is going to help, but I'd be careful. And you also want to mainly eat the inside if you have any chance. Now, if you have a knife, you can clear out the outside, but just to make sure you don't get punctured. Has kind of a raspberry-ish type flavor. It's quite good, even though it's not really ready. They're great when they're ready. They have a nice sweet flavor. You can make a juice out of them. They're really enjoyable. Now I want to talk about how to harvest the pad of the plant. And this is, once again, the leaf section. And you can find some that have more thorns and less thorns, even in the same area. So I just found some that had very few in comparison. I found some that are totally covered. This one's kind of mid-range. And there's two options. You can either take if you're, at home and you brought some tongs along, you can simply hook your tongs on, make a twist, and it will come right off, and you can just put that in a bucket. The other option, the option that you'll have probably when you're out in nature, is you're gonna just take a couple of sticks. You got these sticks, and all you have to do is put them on either side of the plant and then pinch it nice and tight, and as you do, just make simply a twist, and as you twist it off, the pad will come off just like that. So that's all you got to do, and then you have it. Now you got to come to the process of actually cleaning it up so that you're ready to eat it. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. One of the options is you can take it just as it is with the barbs right on it, and you can simply burn it just like you would the prickly pear, and much of them will simply burn off. Now, I wouldn't trust it completely, but this gives you a good start. So you can simply burn as much of both the glow kids and the actual spines right off. Now, what you can do is you can simply cut around the outside just to take any of the barbs from the outside away as much as possible. So, working your way around it. It's a simple process, and the more skilled you get at it, the more you do it, it's just going to become quicker and quicker, and you'll get used to it. Everything is a little bit tedious and cumbersome the first time you do it, but you'll get the hang of it. So once you have that done, what you want to do is clean off the actual face of it. So you're gonna rub your knife, just cutting off any remaining glow kids, and after that I'm actually gonna burn it one more time. Now if you had used a bonfire, probably the first time would be totally sufficient, but just for safety's sake, as I had been cleaning it off, I just want to make sure all the glow kids are off. After that, once it's cleaned up, then you can simply, you could either roast it just as it is, as one big piece, or in this situation you can cut it up, and like I said, it looks like bell peppers at this point, and you've got it. They're ready to be eaten. You can either eat them now, or you could grill them, boil them, heat them up in whatever way you want, add whatever seasonings you prefer, maybe some lemon juice, and you are good to go. So this is a fantastic food to know. You can find these all over most of the United States and Mexico, and it's a tasty treat, nutritious, healthy, and something that's very easy to identify. So if you like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notifications. God bless and have a fantastic day.